All right, well, good afternoon. I think just about everybody here knows me. I'm Rob Menal. I'm a member of Fauntleroy Church in West Seattle. Thank you for joining us for the first of 3 seminars or sessions we've called Exercise Your Power, Elections, Public Policy, and Lobbying. This series came about as a result of my increasing discomfort leading up to the last general election. Friends of mine, both more conservative and more liberal than me, were certain democracy would fall if their side lost. And so was I. A few days later, I voiced my concerns to Fauntleroy Church's senior pastor, Leah Atkinson-Belinsky. And after some back and forth, she politely, more or less, said to me, "What are you going to do about it?" So a week or so later, 3 themes began to emerge: election security, how public policy is made, and the value of the work of lobbyists. A little bit later, I discussed these ideas with Pastor Leah, Associate Pastor Karen Fraser, and the church's Christian Education Committee. We all felt that some learning on these topics could serve to build trust or faith in our democratic form of government, as well as give us information that could be helpful when talking with anyone who wonders if their voice is being heard. So I got serious about planning these seminars. And here we are. This afternoon's session is election security and technology. But before we get into it, there are a couple of Zoom housekeeping points to make. One is David Wells, also a member of the church and far savvier than I am on Zoom, will function as our host, admitting audience members. Number 2, we will invite all of you to add your names to your screen so that we get to know each other. Most of us know each other already, I think. And please mute yourself so that we can allow plenty of time for our guest presentation. Number 3, ask your questions as they come up to you by entering them in the chat function on the lower part of your Zoom screen. And we will explore as many of these questions as we can in the second half of the hour. Also be aware that we're recording this session and we'll post it later on the church's YouTube account so others can view it. And finally, our goal here is understanding, not debate. We'll assume goodwill and respect for our guests as well as the group. We are grateful to all of you for attending today. Now I wish to introduce our presenter. She is Dr. Nahid Aftab. Nahid holds a PhD in anthropology from the University of Minnesota. Her current title is Elections Community Engagement Officer. She has been with King County Election Office for about 2 years. Before that, she was on the staff at the University of Washington. Nahid gave me a tour of the elections office in Renton about 2 weeks ago, and I must say I was impressed by the detailed, extensive security of the elections process from top to bottom. Nahid will explain. And Nahid, it's your turn now, up to you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Rob. And hello, everyone. Thanks for making time today. I'm going to share my screen and hope everything works. Okay, can you all see my screen? It's the title page. Okay, great. Thank you so much. So I'll just get started. But before I forget, anyone is welcome to come get a tour that Rob did. Happy to host you. Rob can put you in touch with me, or you can just email the elections office from our website. So today I'm going to be specifically talking about security and technology and how King County does it. We do it here. If I'm speaking too fast or you can't hear me, just unmute yourself and let me know. Okay. So we have fairly simple mission and visions. Our mission is that we conduct accessible, secure, and accurate elections. And our vision is to be the leader in providing inclusive elections. I could talk about any one of these points for hours, but today I'm going to focus on the security bit. And we will start with just the method of voting. As you all probably know, we have been a vote by mail only since before 15 years now. And I think with COVID, a lot of other jurisdictions and states started following our example. We believe that this facilitates democracy and makes it easier for everyone to vote, makes it voting more accessible, and it allows for a paper trail that makes fraud extremely difficult to commit. So fraud tends to be very low with mail-in voting. And so I just want to show an example of the picture here of the ballot box and the two gentlemen pulling out the ballots from the box and putting them in the clear bins. All these pictures were taken during COVID. So, well, not all of them. Majority of them were taken during COVID. So you'll see that they also have the COVID protocols. The other thing I wanted to show you here is this is your ballot that you receive in the mail. They're all color coded based on the election. So that for us, it's easy to know which election we're in. And then this right here, this barcode on the bottom of your address is unique to the voter. So when we get this back, we know which voter voted. Okay. Let's talk a little bit more about the drop boxes. We have 76 drop boxes throughout the county, and we are always looking for more locations to put a drop box in so that people have access to easy ways to returning their ballots. Each drop box weighs more than 1,000 pounds, so not easy to lift or put in the back of a truck or anything like that to steal. Each drop box is also drilled, like there's concrete on the bottom, and then they're drilled in with like the nails are like over a foot. And then they're drilled in, and it takes about a day to put a drop box in place. So lots of security around putting the drop box in. During an election period, which is currently we are in an election, they're emptied daily by two folks at all times that have been trained in how to do this process. And then election staff closes the box promptly at 8 p.m. So what closes at 8 p.m. is this slot that you put your ballot into. And then we access the drop box from a door that opens on the side. So now we have your ballots in a clear box. We bring them into the county office, dump them out, and stack them so they can go through a machine, which I'll show you the machine in a minute. But what's super important when you're voting is to sign your ballot. This is how we know the person who voted is a registered voter. So we verify it is you who has voted. We check every single signature. If everyone in King County voted, we would have to check almost 1.4 million vote signatures. So we check every single signature. If they don't match, they're easy to cure. So curing in this case just means showing us that it is you who turned in this ballot. So what we do is send you a letter saying we received the ballot, because we can see the address right next to your signature. We know who sent the ballot. We send you a letter and say, did you vote? And if you voted, please send us some more examples of your signature. Then you send that letter back, and then we check whether that matches. If not, we'll follow up again. If you don't respond, then we're allowed to call you and or email you the week before reconciliation. That's when we do the final check that every ballot that we could count has been counted. We will only do that if we have your email and phone number. Those are optional for you to share with us. So once we have checked your signature and then they go. So you're seeing these people with a giant machine. Oh, wait, sorry. Are you seeing the people with a giant machine? Sorry about that. So this is when the signature has been, this is the machine that actually scans the signature so that we can cross-reference it with what we have in our database digitally. So these machines can process 40,000 ballots in an hour, and we have 2 of them. And so what this machine does is scan your signature, and then scans your voter, the barcode that tells us who you are, your address, and then it snips the top of the ballot. So sorry, this is, I flipped those 2. This is where your signature is so important and that we see your signature. This is the barcode that tells us who the voter is. Now, after your signature has been verified, only then are we allowed to pull your ballot out of the envelope. This is the point where what you voted for, how you voted is separated from who voted. So I just wanted to draw your attention to the number at the top right-hand corner of the ballot. This tells us the districts you are in. And so we know that what's called a card style, ballot style, it just shows us that in this election, they were in South Seattle voting for the Seattle School District, for example. So we know the district at this point, we do not know who voted. So some people turn in their ballots only. They just stick a ballot in the mailbox, in the ballot box, thinking that this protects them from, I think it's that they want to remain anonymous. The problem with that is that we don't know who voted in this case. And so we can't count it. And so it actually means that their vote hasn't been counted, because we need to have a registered voter before we can count the vote. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. So here is what we call opening. Ballots are pulled out of the envelope, and then the envelope, there's a security sleeve. They're pulled out of the security sleeve and then stacked. And this bottom picture, you can see how they're stacked. And we go through thousands of these a day. There is no way anyone can look at the address and the name and the ballot at the same time. And then, so we've done that. You see this little hole in your envelope and your security sleeve. They are zip tied through that hole, so we know nothing is inside them. Everything is packaged up and saved, the security sleeve and the envelope. There's laws around how long we can save them, but definitely through the reconciliation, which is like when everything is done. So we have these stacks of ballots at this point. And if we find something strange with these stacks, with these ballots, we can't contact the voter. At this point, we can't contact the voter to clarify anything. So it's up to us to process the ballot correctly. So we have this ballot processing machine that again goes through thousands of ballots in one day. Most, like 90% of them, 95% of them, depending on an election, go through no problem. Every once in a while, you get a ballot that something has happened to it. Folks decided to mark, wanted to vote for so and so, then they changed their mind and decided, voted for someone else. Or their kid put a chocolate chip cookie on the ballot, and now the machine can't read it. It got folded weird. It got wet. During this wet period, we've been getting some wet ballots. In that case, what we do is once the computer identifies what it can't read, it spits it out somewhere else. And those ballots, then a human goes through them and fills out an online ballot, so that every discarded ballot from the machine then gets a digital version of that ballot. And then two people look at it together. If they disagree, it goes up to another couple of people that look at it. And if they can't agree on it, then it goes up to another nonpartisan office that then decides what the ballot is. And we have a handbook, statewide handbook, that shows us how to count things so that we are all about the same all up through the state. So if somebody put a dot and then they moved to another bubble, we all know that the dot doesn't count, because chances are the voter just put a pen down. That's not as intentional as filling out the ballot. So all of this has been discussed, people argued about it, agreed upon a set of rules, and printed a book that we all use in case not everyone agrees on the voter's intent. So we create another ballot for the machine to be able to count. So the machine counts them. This is the machine that actually pulls the ballots through and digitizes them. So they're able to count what was voted for. And in this case, there's a difference between tabulation and actual count. By tabulation, we mean what's being counted is things like the number of ballots that have gone through. So we want to match the number of ballots that have gone through this machine to the number of envelopes we received that went through the other machine, right? And that's the kind of counting or tabulation we mean. Can the machine read the ballots? That's tabulation. That doesn't mean that it is actually spitting out numbers for results. That only happens at 8 p.m. on election day. So the results are, we don't know them, nobody knows them. It's a specific room that has multiple windows, a special lock, biometric lock that is accessible to like 4 people in elections, so that they go in and do the counting machine. These machines that are attached together, so whether it's you're creating a new ballot, the ballots is being scanned to see if it's readable or not readable, the reading of the ballots, the calculating on election day, these are all on a system and a network of their own. They're not attached to the internet. They're not attached to any computer outside of the building, outside of the parameter of where this happens. And so you have to physically get to that space to make any of this happen. And all the USB ports and connectivity there are like, there's a thing that locks them so that no one else, you can't put a USB, you can't put anything in them to fix them. Only certified technicians can come in and work on that, and never alone. So your ballot is tabulated, and then we count it on election night. So let's talk a little bit about IT systems. So there's a number of things you can do to track your ballot, and make sure that when you voted, it came through our office. So you can track your ballot online. You can go into my information, my voter information, and you can see where your ballot is. Now we have started this thing where you can sign up with on your cell number or your email, and you'll get an alert, like an email or a text saying that your ballot was mailed, we received your ballot, your signature has been approved. And then after that, we actually can't tell you anything because we don't know the ballot belongs to this voter. So, but you do know that it's gotten through the process of, we got your ballot, we know it's you, and now we're going to pull out your ballot and count it. To sign up is really easy. I will share the links with Rob or someone else, and they can send them out to you, or you can search just under these words and it'll take you to the right page. It's almost easier to search through Google than actually like find it on our website. And I will share this presentation with Rob so that if you're looking for anything, you can also go back and look at the presentation. So you can track your ballot and know at what stage of the process it's in. Now, in 2016, the Department of Homeland Security designated election systems as critical infrastructure. What that means is that there's a huge amount of funding, well, compared to before, for election offices to use this money to increase their security, get new technologies, and get up to date. And we have been very good about applying for those grants and making our work more secure. So I'll give you some examples. There's, of course, the physical security. We have more than 50 cameras that are monitored 24/7, and lots of alarms that can only be accessed through one or two kinds of badges. We have 8 webcams that stream continuously during a battle when ballot processing begins, and I'll show you an example shortly. We have badge only access in the ballot processing areas. That actually goes just even for our customer service, even on the bottom floor where like the office of people like me, where we sit, those are also badge only access. And then there's wherever we have like the process of we have thousands of ballots in. When we have voted what we call live ballots in the building, they're in another cage, another security space that is only accessible through biometric data, so fingerprinting. And I am fingerprinted by King County, but I don't have access to these spaces because I help out, but this is not my job. There's only special people that have access to the cages. Now, all of this design was done with consulting with casinos, because not surprisingly, casinos have very good security because they need to know where the money is. And so, yeah, and so we've done a really good job with making things physically secure. And so let me show you the next screen. So here is, you're seeing 2 pictures, right? One with a person and one without a person. So this is where the envelopes go through and the signatures scanned and the top is cut off. I took the one without a human being at like a 1:30 today. It's live stream currently. So obviously nobody's there. I'm not surprised. Nobody's working on a Sunday afternoon. This is the example that we have on our website. So, so you can see what people are doing at any given time. And we have eight spaces that have the cameras in them now. And then there's cybersecurity. Our database is completely separate from the tabulation system. And by this, I mean the database for the addresses, voters registration database, all kinds of like communication things. Those are all separate from the tabulation, the counting system of the ballot itself. You must, in order to change anything about the tabulation system, you have to go there in person. And again, there's like layers of security around that. The tabulation system is not attached to the internet or to another network or to anything beyond the system that's there. And there is multiple levels of digital security for accessing the tabulation system itself. We all have to go through cybersecurity training every year. We are required to do that. And so we also get to know all about the new kinds of phishing and ransomware and all of that good stuff. Every year, anything new, we hear about it. And finally, there's quality control. So regular testing, we have what's called a logic and accuracy test, where we compare numbers and then of the machines. And then there's another test, batch audit, where we compare a machine, sort of the machine reading some ballots and then hand count of the ballots and see if they match. Those are open to the media to come and watch us to do that. We have official observers from the two parties, but also nonpartisan observers now. We started this year, and the League of Women Voters is one of our community partners that helps us bring in nonpartisan voters. And then we have all kinds of things around maintaining voter lists. How am I doing on time, Rob?
We're good.
Okay. And you can go in and watch the numbers coming in if you just Google King County Elections Data Dashboard, which gives you, this is one of the many screens. Oh, it's really pixelated. Sorry about that. Which gives you all kinds of information about where we are in terms of numbers for the elections. This is the April election of 2023. So you can see we have so far 133,000 returned ballots for this election. This was Friday. Of course, that was the last time this was updated. And then we have this many registered voters, almost 1.4 million. And so far, under 10% of the voters have turned out for this election. And the reason why this special election has such a high number is because there's a King County measure in there. So every voter gets to vote in this one. It's not like school district specific or anything like that. Okay, so here's another level of security that we are paying close attention to. And this is called misinformation. There's also disinformation and malinformation, and I can differentiate between those if you really want, but it's minutia. So election security, the FBI and the CISA, the election securities folks that overlook this process, have identified misinformation as a large threat looming ahead. And this is things like, I'll give you some information, some examples. Like, I ran into a lady in the bathroom once that said that her mom wasn't comfortable voting in a ballot box or in a mailbox, and she had to come and do it in person because the ballot boxes could just be lifted up and taken away. And she wanted to make sure her vote counted. Or that we ask people to vote early so that we can tell the trend of the numbers, and so we can backfill the ballots to sort of swing the vote. So there's all kinds of, it functions as rumors do, you can imagine. So it starts one place, it sort of gains traction and momentum, it morphs and changes to sort of fit the local narrative. And last election, general election, we had a huge number of people registering and voting the same day as elections. They either registered and voted the same day or voted the same day. So we had lines going out of our vote centers. 2 of the vote centers closed after 10. Other ones went up to like 8 p.m. Usually they don't go that long because people were coming in and wanting to vote the same day so that nothing nefarious happens with their ballot before that day, which just means that the counting is delayed because now we have to process the majority of the ballots after the election is completed, which is fine. We did that and we were on time and everything was good. But this is part of that misinformation that comes that we hear is happening in other jurisdictions. And then we know that it's going to be happening here as well. And so we're prepared for it. So one way to fight this is to just have an ear out on what people are saying about elections. And then to fight that misinformation by having very specific messaging that we go back to and repeat again and again. Elections are run by professionals who are trained, educated, have experience. Elections go through bipartisan, nonpartisan certification or audits, various ways of, and the more you can either pay for these or allow someone to come and audit you, certify you, the better it looks. And then elections are secure and transparent. So we keep track of everything that happens. And we show what we do to the public. And that is all I have, and I'm ready for questions. Thank you again for listening. Let me see what time it is. Okay.
We have about 20 minutes or so. I have a question right from the beginning. Is there a national body that accredits these local election offices? And if there is, are all the county election offices in this state certified?
Yes, yes, and yes. So they certify things ahead of time and after. Like when we say reconciliation at the end, that's another body coming in and saying, okay, you've counted all the ballots. I see evidence that you've counted all the ballots and this is the results.
We're going to open this up. So I think there's a way to raise your hand to be recognized, and then you can verbalize what your question is. Marianne, I see your hand up first.
Yes, I was just wondering for people who are homeless or living without shelter, how they feel so disenfranchised anyway. How can we encourage them to get to able to vote?
Yes, great question. So they need to have a way to receive mail. And that doesn't mean that they have to receive mail in their residence, for example, or whatever. We have folks that, receive mail in a homeless shelter or PO box, a family's home. So they need to tell us where they want to receive that mail. And then the other thing they need to tell us is that where they consider is home. It could be the address of a library. It could be a cross street. And so we can find which jurisdiction to place them in. That means that if they are, let's say they're in one of the Ballard areas, they will vote all things Ballard, even if they get their mail in Federal Way or whatever, right?
So like a lot of them use the Lutheran Compass Center and on Washington Street, South Washington, but they're hanging out in White Center or Burien.
Yes.
So they would give some kind of Burien location.
If that's what they want, yeah.
That's what they want.
Yeah.
So really it's going to take a little bit of time to educate them how they can get their vote in.
Yes, yes. And a lot of so we try to work with folks that provide services to the homeless, whether it's food or like you were saying, where they get their mail, where they do their laundry, for example, is another place that they tend to get mail where there's laundry facilities. We work with the folks running those places to get out that information. So if you know of a place that doesn't have this information and does support folks that are homeless, let me know and I will connect with them and sort of pass on that information so then they can pass it on to the voters.
Is it possible for them to go on the day of voting and go for an in-person voting?
Yes.
That's the other opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay.
They can go in person. They can also go to the libraries and print out their ballots. So let's say they don't have an address or they didn't get their mail or whatever.
That
You
happens.
can do that. All of us can do that, right? Let's say the dog ate the ballot. You can go online and print one. And the King County librarians, we partner with them. Most of them are very well versed on how to get to the ballot and print it out and help someone fill out their ballots.
Okay, that's the big thing right there. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Sure.
Next up,
Donna
Donna.
had a question.
Yeah, hi, thanks. My question is sort of around the nature of staffing and around safety and security for staffing, especially with the live streams that you have. And I can't help remember the lovely election workers in Georgia who had the ginger mint that was accused of being a thumb drive. So how do you recruit workers, make sure that you have adequate staff in place to support all of these great things you have in place, and check on their integrity and make sure they feel safe? I'm really curious about that.
Well, thanks for that question. Staffing has been difficult, I won't lie. Especially since we go from this, normally we have about 70 people just on our staff. And then something during a general elections, we hire maybe, I don't know, hundreds of people for temporarily to do all of the work of like ballot boxes, opening, scanning, etc. We don't work with volunteers, we hire folks. So we do have like that application and all of that on file. We may even hire folks for one day to close a ballot box. We work a lot with retired folks who have that flexible schedule, or school teachers sometimes in the summer. I've had substitute teachers close boxes with me because they don't have a regular like schedule that they have to meet. So if any of you are interested in working temporarily for one of these projects, let me know. So we do go through the application process, then we have trainings, the NeoGov and all of that. In terms of security for the election workers, so this is all public and open, right? And if somebody did get in their mind that they were going to harass an election worker, they can do that. They can see people and do that. So some of the steps we have, for example, is that our election staff is not out in the field by themselves. So when you're closing a drop box, you do 2 persons at a time. The other thing we have is we have lanyards colored specifically for the temporary staff who are there just to do this one thing. And observers and media are not allowed to talk to them. They can only talk to people with gray lanyards that are at the management supervisor level. So they can only talk to full-time sort of mid-level, mid-manager level people. We've been lucky that we haven't had things in King County, but people do think about that.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very helpful.
one other observation, I was impressed, and you didn't mention this specifically, when the team of 2 goes to a ballot box, empties a ballot box, they put them in a plastic bin. They seal that plastic bin. The bins go into a truck that's owned or rented by the county.
Yeah.
And then when it gets to the King County Elections Office, it has to go through a security gate, cameras, and goes to a loading dock. So right from the point when the ballots are picked up, security is very tight, in my opinion.
And the seals are both recorded on a piece of paper. And so then when we open them, we recheck the seals, and then we save those, signed by 2 people. And then we save those papers. So there's a paper trail. We know who picked up ballots from which box on which day, so that we can go back and talk to them if something arises. But yes, double seal, double record records.
What's been the King County experience for fraud or allegations of fraud? Can you give us a statistic for King County?
So this was before I joined. This was the last general election. There was something like they did the count, and there was like something like 20 some odd or 19. Some of you may have seen it in the news of dead voters voting. And so out of almost 1 million ballots, voters, they found 19 or so. And a couple of them were folks that lived in the same house with the person who passed away, and they just mixed up the ballots. But the majority of them were the partners or the spouse saying so-and-so passed away recently, and I know they would have really wanted to vote this way, so I want this vote to count. So none of it was fraudulent in the way that they wanted to change the outcome of the elections. And our messaging is, isn't it good that we found the 19 out of 100, 900,000? So, and we could follow up on each voter, on each one of those fraudulent votes.
On that same kind of direction. So when I first 15 years ago, when mail-in voting became a thing, my mind just immediately went to abuse, people in the household forcing someone else to sign their ballot and then they fill it out for them. Is that a thing? I mean, we don't know that. I mean, I know the trade-off is you get a lot more ballots versus everybody having to show up. But
Yes, I suppose. So some of it, sometimes I think about, okay, that's possible. And then why would someone do that? Like, could you sway an election by making your kid vote a certain way because they got the ballot? And I don't see that happening per se.
it has to be so large scale.
Right. So you
Right,
have to
right.
convince a whole bunch of people to do the same thing at the same time in their homes, which is really hard to make that happen. Now, I can see it being individually. Like, there was this one gentleman who called and said, he was Vietnamese, elderly Vietnamese, and we have Vietnamese speakers on our staff. And we do the ballots in Vietnamese as well. And he was saying his son wasn't helping him get his ballot in language because his son wanted him to vote a certain way. So he calls, he talks to us, and then our staff member walked him through the printing of the ballot and said, here's how you can get your ballot again. Your son, if you send us this, the other one won't count. They walked him through how to make this happen. So that he can vote without the influence of his son. So interpersonally, that can happen. But I hope people reach out to us if that is happening, and we can figure an alternative.
The only other thing on a large scale that could happen is people could sign their ballots and keep them empty and sell them, right?
Yeah, but then when we open it up, there wouldn't be a ballot in it. Oh, okay. So when we open it up, there wouldn't be a ballot in it. And at that moment, that envelope will then go into another pile that says, pull this, so-and-so did not vote. So let's say, Mary, you turned it in and there was no ballot in your envelope. I pulled it out. I see there's nothing in there. I get Mary's envelope and I turn it back into our signature processing team and say, look, Mary's envelope was empty. She didn't actually vote. Can you mark her as not having turned in a ballot?
No, I mean, you could give somebody the whole thing.
You could sign the outside and give the blank ballot to somebody else for $50,
Oh, I see what you mean. Yes, yes. You
right?
just-
Again, it would be a major
sell your-
organizational effort.
Got it. I'm sorry. Yes, sell your vote. Yes, yeah. I guess you could.
This is
There you have a criminal
Treacherous mind.
mind. I
Yes.
never knew.
Greg,
I've got a question.
Sure.
go.
This is very hypothetical. If somebody contacted an elected official and said, find the votes, you know, I mean, bizarre, but maybe that would happen sometime. From
No,
what you described, I don't know how you would legitimately prove to some, if say the elected official said, okay, I'll find the votes, how could they possibly portray publicly that they could find the votes? I mean, from what you described, I didn't even think if somebody was told to do that, that you could even, you know, legitimately do that. I mean,
Yes, I think that depends on when they call you. I suppose if they call you early enough and you could go around and buy people's votes, like Mary said, maybe you could hit that number. Or if you can find the number of unregistered voters or people who haven't voted and give them money to go vote the same day, but you still would need a voter to vote a certain way.
yeah, I mean, after the election, though, it just doesn't seem like.
That won't work. That
Yeah,
can't-
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
but it would be possible for a precinct to disappear, I think, potentially. Not in Washington State. I think it's a tight system, but if it's paper ballots, it seems to me more likely someone could appeal, well, drop that county out because they're going to be 2/3 voting for my opposition.
Yeah.
Is that,
Oh, I see. In the count, in the final count.
Yeah,
they just disappear.
they just.
Yeah, but when-
11,800 of them.
She already said that there was a body that goes and checks, and that body would flag that. You know, that's
Yeah.
certified.
It would look really funny if this one district was just blank, because I don't know if you remember the dashboard of numbers I put up, that then gets layered by our GIS team on all the various districts that it applies to. So it's a school district, we have a school district map. So if one of the districts somehow in the network, you said that don't count these ballot styles that are from this district, you would have a big blank spot in the map and you would know something is wrong. So you couldn't pull out a district without doing a lot of work, first of all, and then someone would see it. There's no way that someone wouldn't see it when the numbers come in.
Thanks.
I have a question back on sort of Mary's issue. I'm an old guy and I forgot to put my ballot in the envelope and I sent it in. Can I go in and get another envelope, or how do I get my ballot submitted?
So you can print an envelope on the computer. So the same thing, my voter info there, you can print an envelope with your voter information on the envelope itself. I also recommend that you can call us and we can get you an envelope somehow if it's early enough. Or go to a vote center. If you're like the day of and you're running really late, I recommend going to a vote center and explaining like what happened, and then they can, so you're right there and turning over your ballot in a special envelope.
Okay.
I was gonna let everyone know that this last general election, my envelope went to the wrong address because somehow I didn't mean to, but I changed my address intentionally. And I did call the office and they said, oh yeah, you can just print a new one. I can see where you changed your address and how it happened. Like they were able to actually tell me how I changed my address without knowing it. And so I was like, oh, okay. Didn't think about how that happens. And then they said, just go ahead and print it out. I was able, I mean, I consider myself tech savvy, but you know, they went through and they told me step by step of how to go in, log in. I had to give the information that what was able to check that I am who I say I am. And then I was able to print my ballot, and they tell you how to fold it and all kinds of stuff, and then send it in.
Yeah, yeah. And once we count a ballot, once we count a voter, we won't count another ballot by them. So it'll flag a double vote, and then we have to figure that out separately.
And
Dia-
then to follow up on that, I told her that I needed my address changed back to my correct address, and she followed up. I think she said she had to wait until the election was complete by about 2 or 3 weeks, and she followed up and said it was taken care of.
Great. We did.
Irene has her hand up.
Hi, thanks, Karen. Nahid, I was remembering recently a time, I think it was in the year 2000, when I was going to be out of the country. It was right after the primary, which at that time was in September, but the results hadn't come in yet, and there was no general election ballot. And I was able to go into the elections office and complete what they called a submarine ballot. And I don't know if that's a technical term or what, but they said it was for sailors who were underwater for months at a time. But what is the process now if someone is going to be out of the country without a mailing address? I was on a sailboat moving from place to place. So without an address outside the country, how can you vote in an election before the ballots are ready? In that case, they put everybody who could possibly make it through the primary on one ballot. It was typewritten.
Yeah.
And they said, if you vote for someone who doesn't make it, your vote doesn't count. If you vote for someone who does make it, your vote counts. And of course, I was pretty sure who was going to make it through the primary. But anyway, what do you do? What's the process now?
So we have something called something for overseas voters. So that's military, embassy workers, etc. And they get it through email. So they get the ballot through email. They can print it, send it back, or fill it out and send it back through email. And we have what's called an alt format that who then does that processing. Now, let's say you're in Germany and you really wanted to snail mail it in. As long as you have it in the mail by 8 p.m. election day and it's marked on the envelope as that, we will still count it, as long as we get it before certification, which is usually 20 days after the deadline of the elections. Anything other than that, I've never heard of a case.
So this is good because email makes more sense than a submarine ballot. But how do you sign up for that if you know you're going to be out of the country?
There's a place in my voter info where you can say I want to get what's called overseas OBMP, online ballot marking program. Sign up for that. Or call us and we'll make it happen.
Great, thank you.
Doug, did you have a question?
Well, I did, but it was pretty much exactly what Irene asked. Our son is in the Navy.
Mhm.
He's currently stationed outside of Tokyo, but periodically he's deployed on a ship and he's out to sea for months at a stretch. So he really has to go to that My Voter page and register that way.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. And I can, I'll write my email in the chat box and my phone number, and you can feel free to just contact me directly if you have questions about that. I don't know what happens if someone doesn't have internet access, which I can't imagine this day and age, but that's, and they're abroad, but I could investigate if that's a situation that might happen.
Not for David, he's in IT.
Hey Doug, I just found
Yeah.
a pamphlet online, but it was 2021, so I assume it's still valid. It's a whole pamphlet you can get that covers for anybody that's not at home and needs to vote, including the homeless. Because I couldn't find any, I haven't been able to find where you can go in a library to print off a ballot, but you can register to vote. But so anyway, but there's this, just Google search it. It's a whole complete pamphlet on any scenario if you're not home.
Yeah.
Marianne.
Are there any more questions before we wrap this up?
Well, I actually don't have a question because I know the answer to it, but Naheed, could you describe what accessible voting machines look like and why someone might come into a voting center to use those machines?
Yes, good question. They look like a computer screen, but turned vertically. And they have a special, so they can have like earphones, or they could have audio. So this is for folks that have either visual or listening impairments. They can hear the ballot basically, and then like use the mouse in a certain, there's lots of instructions on it. Use the mouse in a certain way to click their selection. And they are in a space with a curtain so that they can vote in private using these machines. We can also bring these machines to someone's home. Let's say someone is homebound and they want to use one of these machines, and that we are legally required to bring it to their home. And if someone wants us to come and pick up their ballot from their home, we can do that. Let's say you're homebound and you don't trust anybody to pick up your ballot. We can come and show your IDs, and you can vote, pick up your ballot. So we do our best to get to voters, drop off your ballot in person, all kinds of things. We definitely have picked up ballots for folks that are homebound.
Thank you. I just learned something from your response that I didn't expect. So thank you so much.
So on behalf of Fauntleroy Church, thank you, Naheed, for this presentation. I learned even more. I think it was really terrific. And my confidence in our election process is reinforced.
Great. Thank you all so much. I'm just going to put my email in the chat in case you need to get a hold of me. And of course, Rob knows who I am and how to get a hold of me.
Karen, would you put up the next slide for me, please?
Sure. Hold on a second. Wait a minute. Things are in my way. This isn't the next slide. Just a minute. There you go.
So I want to invite you to participate same time next week. I'm going to interview Eileen Cody, who most of you, I think, know. She's a recently retired House of Representative member in Olympia and chair of the House Healthcare Committee for many years. And we're not going to go through so much the steps like going from committee to the Senate to across to the House and to the committees, not the transactions or the sequence. It's more of how does an idea become state law. And so Eileen and I have discussed some questions. She said there'll be more because I'll talk the way I usually talk. I think she's implying that she has a lot to say, and I really respect her. I've become pretty well acquainted with her personally over the last 25 years, especially since I retired. So thank you for participating, and I look forward to seeing you again next Sunday.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Just a reminder that it is a different link, so we'll be sending that out in various ways. We've posted all three in different newsletters and stuff, but we'll send this one out again so that you'll see, but it is a different link, so don't use this one again. And I think next week should be interesting. I mean, if we think even about the Sam Martinez hazing laws and stuff, that had to have a place to start. And Hector and Jolene had to know what are the hurdles to get that through. So anyway, we've got some real life concerns about that or experience with that in this congregation. So thank you again, Naheed. Thank you, Rob, for answering the call. What do you want to do about this? I appreciate that you did that.
All right.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks
Bye
a
now.
lot.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.